Welcome back to Yerushalmi Terumot. Now, we're going to go back a bit to Mem Tesamid base. To put you in the picture, we've got some tame flour in the dough, and the question is how big the dough should be, and whether the tame flour will affect the dough and therefore make the whole dough tame, and so on. And the last thing we said was we had we had a cheshbon of Chizkiah. He said we're talking about a mixture where there's 4 kav, and the tame flour is 1/6 of the whole mixture. And then after that, we go to here. Milsa de Chizkiah Amra, which is Mem Tesamid base. Okay, and the words from Chizkiah comes out. Now basically, he says you're allowed to knead the whole dough in tumah, providing. There is a small area within the bowl, a little sectioned off, sort of where you might have a tiny dough there, and that's what you use to separate for challah. Right, it's in the crevice within the bowl. So what he says was, we don't want a kibetza of tamei stuff touching that area, that crevice there, within the big kneading bowl. But the rest of the dough you can knead, even though there's more of the tamei flour. So he's only worried about the small challah aspect as opposed to the rest of the dough. Mil said Rabbi Yochanan Amra, from the words of Rabbi Yochanan, now we don't actually bring his words, but he gave another share for how big this mixture has to be. It comes out that the hesed to knead the mixture was with Achlei take a base tmei and a gas be Isa. He says throughout the whole mixture you mustn't have an egg size of tamei flour. It's not enough that the actual dough that you separate for challah, you don't have an egg of tamei flour, right? And in order not to defile the isa, the whole dough, he says you have to divide the whole mixture into little doughs that neither of them will have an egg size of tamei flour. So you hear that? So one opinion says as long as you have your little challah, which is tahar, that's fine. We don't care about the rest. And the other one says the whole dough, you've got to be careful and break it down into little bits, so that none of it is the size of a tamei of an egg of flour. That makes more sense. Maybe there's no argument. But ideally, you want the whole dough to be okay, divided into small bits, and maybe one for each child or tamei. So if it's b'diavad or lechatchila, you shouldn't separate tahar stuff from tamei stuff. So make the whole dough in a state of purity. But the Eved, if it's mixed up, whatever, then at least one challah aspect should be tahar. I also hold this. There really is no argument between them. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, then, we divide the whole dough into small doughs. How many portions should there be? How much flour is there? If there's a bit of tamei flour in that shear, if there's 16 eggs worth of tamei flour, Rabbi Yochanan should give alachas b'shvaisrei. Divide all the flour into 17 portions. Because since the tamei flour is a volume of 16 eggs, if you divide it into 17, each one will be less than an egg size. But Asyaki Bisa Sasaim. Now it's talking about a case where each dough has got a share of challah of 43 eggs, and if you're mafish one challah from these doughs completely, for the rest, you can pater. Apart from these doughs, you can also pater an additional sasayim of dough, because this dough can pater basically another 23 like it, because the share challah is 1 in 24, right? So you can pater another dough which is 7 doughs, apart from 17 which has got the tamei flour in it. So the volume of the 7 doughs is roughly sasayim. So basically you can pater another 23 doughs on top of it. Right? They say now in the notes here, so the share challah is 43 eggs, 43 and a fifth, 17 doughs, where each one would be 734 eggs, which is slightly more than 5 sar. If you separate for challah this isa, which has got 43.2, you can pater slightly more, which is 24 times as much, which is 1036.8 eggs, bit more than 7 sar. The difference is between 302 eggs and 288 eggs. So Saim is 288, we're saying it's 302. So the reason why there is a slight difference is because some parts with challah, we said you separate for against 24 times as much, right? But when it's tamei, you only have to separate against 48 times as much. It's not going to be eaten anyway. So because of that, and because the element of tamei flour within this, and there's an element of tamei aspect, therefore you don't need it completely 24. Some of it can be 48 times as much, based on the proportion of tamei flour in the mixture. Okay, and then it works out exactly that. So the tahor part, 42.26 eggs, and a third part of 16 eggs, and the rest 41.93 will part of 24. Basically, you end up with 1,006 eggs, 0.32 of tahor flour, and it will patter a dough of 1,022.32, which includes 16 eggs of tamei flour. And this is close to Sasaim, which is 288 eggs, and another 17 doughs of Shechala, 73.4. Okay, let's carry on. Now we come back to the maskana that from the words of Chizkiah that Isur Tumah is not batel. So if you have tamei flour which is mixed with tahor flour, it remains tamei, and the tumah is not batel. Rabbi Baba Mama Boy, but let's hadopli Rabbi Yosef. Surely this argues on the following: Rabbi Yosef nevela betela b'shchuta. A piece of meat nevela is batel, a piece of meat of an animal which is slaughtered is batel b'raiv as far as tumas nevela, but not as far as all tumah, all laws of tumas nevela. So he says batel b'magah, and some didn't. It's batel by touching it. So this meat of nevela got mixed up with other meat. If you touch it, you're not tamei by touching it. But as far as carrying it, but carrying it is not batel. So as far as maga is batel b'raiv, and you're not tamei, it doesn't define other things. As far as carrying it, it's not batel b'raiv. So if you took the mixture, you're tamei if you carried it. The reason is as far as maga is batel b'raiv, even according to other Tanaim who hold min b'mina is not batel. Now why? The reason why it's not completely batel, because a slaughtered animal can't become nevela. Right? And since the meat, which is mevatel, can receive the din of the miut, they're like two different minim, even though it's all meat. Min b'she'ena mina is batel b'raiv, right? According to everyone. Basically, we see in the words of Hanina, nevela is batel b'raiv as far as the touching tumah, but not on the carrying. And that's a question of what Chizkiah said, that tumah is not batel at all. Rabbi Yossi answers, Tamam, nevela mixed up with shchuta, efsha the shchuta shetas nevela. One can't become the other. Shchita can't have a din of nevela. Right? So nevela is batel as far as touching. But our Mishnah, the words of Chizkiah, truma tzmeya falling in chulin tahirin, efsha the chulin lasts truma. Chulin, which is tahor, which is the majority, can become tamei, like the miut of fruit of tumah if it touches tumah. And since that's the case, it's mixture. As far as tumah is like a din of teruv as min b'minai, and it's not batel b'raiv. Another explanation here. Amar Chizkiah, Rav Siman Kashai to Rav Baba Mamal Kama. A slightly different version. Who asked the question from Rabbi Yosef Hanina, and who was the one who answered it? It wasn't Rabbi Yosef, it was Rav Baba Mamal. Okay, back to the normal din of mixtures. Truma is not batel less than 100. We bring a brisa. Tani we've learned. So truma shenaflo lepachos mimeh. And so and so truma falls in less than 100 of chulin. Are'ela medumain. So they are mixed up, and you can't, as Yisrael can't eat it. You can't use that to pay a principal and the fifth for elsewhere. Nor from elsewhere upon them. So based on the reckoning of the amount. So if Yisrael ate b'shogeg fruits of truma, and he wants to pay to a Kohen karen v'chomesh of the mixture, you only pay based on the amount of pro rata chulin which is in this mixture. You can't pay from the truma. You can only pay based on the chulin. You can't pay from the truma in this mixture. You can't use that for your payment, right? So you can only pay from that chulin element within this mixture. And if a zar b'shogeg ate from the fruit in this mixture, you don't pay karen v'chomesh based. You only pay on the truma percentage which is in this mixture. But on the chulin percentage, you don't have to pay karen v'chomesh, right? You only have to pay for the truma percentage. And the Gemara adds on. And this halacha that let's say it's based on the cheshbon of the truma estimate, that's with a mixture which doesn't mix around like yavish b'yavish, dry things, wheat and wheat, where each thing is significant, is separate, but we don't know which one's which. Like if you have liquid measures like wine and wine or oil and oil, they become one. Then Basically, we just follow the majority. So in Rov Truma, if the majority is Truma, then you pay Harav Chaimish on the whole thing as if it's all Truma. In Rov Cholin, if the majority is Cholin, then you pay Kol Haloshon even from the Truma. You treat it as Cholin. You don't pay on eating it Harav at all. You only pay based on the cheshbon of this Truma which is inside. But that's a mixture of liquids. You follow the Rov. But Yavish, we don't follow the Rov. We look at the payments of Truma based on the cheshbon of the Truma percentage and Chulin in the mixture. Okay, halacha base. Now we're going to talk about mixtures of Truma which is Tameh, which even a Kohen can't eat. And it got mixed up with Truma which is Tahor. Sa Truma Tameh. Shanafla Lameh Sa Truma Tahira. So Tameh Truma falls into Tahor Truma. Yerushalmi Masechet. Yerushalmi say no one can eat it. It's like Truma Tameh that even Kohenim can't eat. Because they hold Truma Tameh is not bottled entire, even 100. The Tameh aspect remains, right? It doesn't get nullified. Beis Hillel Matirin, Beis Hillel allow the mixture for Kohenim, like Truma Tahira. According to them, Truma Tameh is bottled in 100 of Truma Tahira. So they say it doesn't matter, it's Tameh, so what? It's bottled in 100. Beis Hillel Beis they said, Hayal Tahira Asur Lazarim. Look, Truma which is Tahir, Israel can't eat. Or Tamei Asur L'Kohen, Tamei Truma, a Kohen can't eat. So we should compare them. Tahira Ayla, just like Tahir, it is nullified in Chulin, 100 Chulin, as far as the Is of Israel eating it. After Truma Tahir, so Truma which is Tamei should be nullified in 100 of Truma Tahira, as far as the Is of for Kohenim eating it, and shouldn't be Tamei anymore. Arbolahen Be'Shem said, no. Im Hela Chulin Akalin, and Mutar Lezarim. It's all very well that Chulin nullify Truma because they're mutter for Klal Yisrael. Esa Tahira, the Truma which is Tahir, they remove the Isur on Israelim. Are we going to tell me Tale Truma Chamura Azura Lazarim? Truma which is more severe, which Israel can't eat. Esa Trumea, that should nullify Tamei Truma to allow it to Kohenim. Since Truma Tahira is also Isur Chamor, is even also Israelim, it shouldn't be able to nullify the Truma Tameh, even as far as the Isur Kohenim. So the Truma Tameh should remain Tameh in the whole mixture. A Kohen shouldn't be able to eat it. Now, after a while, Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel that Truma Tameh is batel in Tahira. Now, La'acha Shahaidu, after they agreed that Truma Tameh is batel in Tahira, Rebbe Lezer Omer Turam, Rebbe Lezer says, right, you separate one salt from the mixture, and you burn it and you treat it as Truma, which is Tameh. Just like you separate one sal from the mixture, right, which falls into 100, and the remainder is mutar l'kohenim. The Chachamim said avda b'miyuta. That means that the truma which is tameh is completely batal in the truma one which is tahor, and as if it doesn't exist. You don't have to separate one from the mixture. Everything's mutar for kohenim.
So Rebbe Lezer saying it's not bottle.
Rebbe Lezer saying you have to separate one and burn it. That's the one that we will give. That one you have to separate one and burn it like truma, which is tameh. So out of this mixture, right, you have to separate one.
Even though it might not be the tameh.
Yeah, it won't be the one. It won't be. Just like you separate one from a mixture of truma falling into chulin, right? So okay, so he says you have to separate one. Okay, there's a din harama. Just like Truma and Chulin, you have to separate one. That's from Lezer according to his shitta. The sal which fell in is the sal which came out. Now, the Chacham said, no, it's batel, it's nullified. You don't have to separate one. Now, next din. So Truma shenafla lamer. Truma falls into Chulin. Higbia, you took out one sar from the mixture for the one that fell in, but nafla, and then that sar went and fell into another mixture, into more chulin. Rebbe Lezer says this sar that fell into the second mixture, we treat it as proper truma. This is exactly definite truma. It's not bottle unless you have 100 against it. We don't say when you lifted one, you took a percentage of what fell in, and therefore it's not only truma. We say no, it's 100% truma. But Chacham said no. It can only cause trouble based on the percentage of truma in it. So it's now fallen, truma fell into a mixture with 50 against it. So 1 in 51 is truma. This goes into another mixture. Well, 1 in 51 of what fell in is truma, right? Because it's based on what the percentage of what fell in. Now, that's all very well where truma falls into chulin. What about the soil that's separated, it falls into other chulin? We're going to bring a machlekes about truma. Truma falls into less than 100, but it's all meduma. What about being medamea, causing other mixtures? Now, so truma shenafla lepachos mimea. So truma falls into less than 100 chulin. V'nidmu, you've got a mixture. V'nafal min amduma l'makamacha, and then some of this mixture went and fell elsewhere into other chulin. Rebbe Lezer Omer with Damascus truma vada. Rebbe Lezer says it's definite truma. Whatever fell into the chulin has got a din of definite truma. It's a mixture like truma falling into chulin. They said, no, it's the element, the percentage of truma in that mixture, which can go and forbid another mixture, not the whole thing. And there's other two dinim where also we go to fi cheshbon. A dough of chulin, which sort of rose based on sourdough of truma, and it's osas Israelim, and that dough went and fell into another dough of chulin, and it rose, it fermented as a result. It only asks only the cheshbon, the percentage of the truma in the sa'ir, which was in it. And if it wasn't just that on its own, if there wasn't enough share to cause the whole thing to rise, the second dough, then there's no asur. So the psul of Maim She'uvin, right? Rainwater passes on mikveh with 3 lug, right? If you don't have a kosher 40-sol mikveh. So 3 lug fall in, is possible through tvila, even if afterwards, if it falls into less than a share, right? Less than 40 sol, then it causes trouble. And even though you add 40 sol later, it doesn't help. So here it's possible for tvila, even if later on you make up the share 40 sol. Right? But still the problem is lefi cheshbon, the vessels that the rainwater fell in. If it fell 3 lug, I'm sure if it fell in. If it fell 3 lug from 2 or 3 kalim, they passel the mikvah. If they fell into a mikvah, let's say from 4 kalim or more, basically each kali only had less than a lug, it doesn't passel. So it's 3 lug that passels a mikvah, right? And if you have the shear, then it's fine. But if you don't have 40 saw, 3 lug comes in, it passels based on that percentage. So truma shenafla l'mea v'igbiya. A saw of truma falls into 100 chulin, and you lifted up the saw. It's batel. You separate one saw out of the mixture, to give to a kohen. V'nafla acheres, and then after that, another saw of truma fell into the mixture and became batel. V'igbiya, you lifted it up. V'nafla acheres, and then another saw fell in of truma into this mixture, and it happened a few times. Areza muteres. This mixture is permitted until the majority of what fell in is truma. So if so much truma fell in that there's more than the chulin that's there, then the teruvis mixture is forbidden because there's too much truma involved. So if the truma that falls in 3 times, 4 times is more than the chulin that was there, then you got a problem. Now, so truma shenafla labeya. A soft truma fell into 100 chulin. You didn't manage to lift it out. It fell. Now another soft truma fell in. Areza asura. Now you've got 2 soft truma in this 100. That's not enough. You need 100 against each soft truma. Chulin is not 100 against the 2 soft truma. Rav Shimon allows it. Now the first part of the Mishnah, truma tamea that falls into truma tahira. And we said machlekes after they agreed. Now, who agreed to who? Rav Yehuda bar Pazia, Rav Yosef and Amrin. They said, Vataninan. They said we learned in our Mishnah acha shahaydu. Me haydu. Me. Who agreed to who? So remember, who says what? Beis Shammai say if tamei falls into tahar, then it's not batel. It's carrying it is still a problem, right? It's considered tamei. Whereas Beis Hillel say no. So who agreed to who? Me haydu. Me. Beis Shammai to Beis Hillel. Or Beis Hillel or Beis Shammai. Amrin, they said, let's go out and learn from others who were asked their view about this. They went out, they heard Rav Chizkiah, Rav Acham, Rav Yehuda bar Chanina, This is the case in our Mishnah. Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel. So it was that way round. Now we bring a raya from elsewhere that Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel. Rabbi Yerush and Rabbi Aya Shomalam in Hadah from this Mishnah in Tvul Yom. It says Ama'ara Mekeli Lekeli. You're pouring truma liquid from vessel to vessel. The Naga Tvul Yom. The Tvul Yom touches the water as it's coming down. Bikiluach, in the stream of the water coming down, and he's defiled the mashke he touches. Ya'ale be'achar ameah. The truma tameah is batel with a mashke tahir of truma where it's coming in. You've got 100 against it. So if you're having the truma tahira 100 more than the tameah, then the truma tameah is batel in the 100 of truma tahira, and that's like Beis Hillel. In time of Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai shalai ta'ala. If you think it's the other way around, Beis Hillel agreed that it doesn't get nullified. Then man tana hachatala. Then who is the tana who learned the Mishnah? It is nullified. Lo Beis Shammai, but lo Beis Hillel. Because even Beis Hillel, you might suggest they changed their mind and said it's not batel. So it must be Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel. The Mishnah is agreed to everyone. Noima, we could say Beis Hillel Shaddai. So Hillel learns it kaidem shiyadu le Beis Shammai before they agreed to Beis Shammai. So maybe they had a view that Truma Tameh is Batal Tahira, but after that maybe they changed their mind and passed on out Beis Shammai. There's no Batal. Now Rabbi Yossi brings another raya that Beis Shammai are the ones who agreed to Beis Hillel. Our Mishnah says this. You see that from the Mishnah, Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel. Because it says, Acha Shahidu, and then Rabbi Lezer Eber Terumot Daf. Rabbi Lezer says, no, you have to burn it. You lift up one and burn it. Rabbi Lezer Lav Shabutihi, and he came from the house of Beis Shammai. He often followed Beis Shammai's views. Right? And if Rabbi Lezer is the one from Beis Shammai, says you have to separate one, and it should be burnt, and yet the rest of the mixture is permitted, so the truma which is tameh is batel in the tahor. And therefore we see that Beis Shammai chazru, that Beis Shammai were the ones maybe who agreed, since he was the one who said it should be burnt, and everything else is permitted, the mixture, so truma tameh is batel in tahora. Yes, it must be Beis Shammai the ones who agreed to Beis Hillel. The Brayso also says this clearly. The Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel. It says, they agreed one to the other. The Truma Tameh is Tahale, it should become nullified. This Batel is Batel entire, and that's why I like the view of Beis Hillel. Now, they said Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai was Salkin line, Beis Shammai was successful with their claims. Right? They proved the questions against it. And yet, how can it be in the end that Beis Shammai agreed to Beis Hillel? Beis Shammai had valid rights, valid points. There's another answer Beis Hillel answered, which we don't quote here. This is the answer back. Look, truma is tahor, which no one can eat. Shivavon misa eats azorim. Azor eats chaim misa. Oila, and yet that's batel in 100 chulin. Then truma, which is tameah, which is an asay for the kohanim to eat it. Shiva asay it's on kohanim. Right? The kohen who eats truma tameah is only isasay. It's more lenient than misa v'dei shemayim. Leish kashkin, how much more says batel in 100 of truma tahira? Okay. Now we said so truma falls into 100, and you lifted one up, it fell elsewhere. Rabbi Lezer says we treat it as proper truma. Said no, you follow the estimate as to how much truma was in this mixture. So truma shenafla lebeah, it falls into 100 of chulin, and you lift up a sar, and then that sar falls elsewhere. Chulin kasher mevat linoisa. You don't need 100 to nullify it in the second place. Even this sar with a bit of chulin is ready batel. Masnisa pliga Rav Yochanan, but our Mishnah seems to argue Rav Yochanan, because it says the Chachamim say Eino demas elo lefi cheshbon. It still causes a problem based on the truma estimate within the mixture. So even according to the Chachamim, it's still a forbidden mixture according to the mitzvah, according to the number of truma in this mix, and not like Rav Yochanan that it does not medameh at all. Even if it gets mixed up in chulin, a small tiny bit is all button and a tiny bit. He says no, we follow the cheshbon. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yochanan, like Tani Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yosef never learnt our Mishnah in this Gersa that we have. He never had the wording Eino Damas Lefi Cheshbon. His Gersa was Eino Damas called Eka. It doesn't cause anything forbidden. It's batel, even in chulin, the smallest amount. Okay, according to him, it was completely batel. Yehuda Rabbi Amar, he said, if the chulin that you've got, the sar that was lifted up, right, and that sar was lifted up and fell into a second mixture, Okay, so if it is the chulin that it's got mixed up in the second box, if it's more than 101 of a sar, then truma is batel in the rov chulin. Basically, you don't have to have 100 against it, even if. One second. So you don't need 100 chulin against the truma. That's what he's saying. Yeah, when it falls into a second mixture, you don't need 100 against it. But if it's not a rov, then it's not batel. So he says the correct wording is eno damas ela lefi cheshbon. Lefi cheshbon is it makes the mixture forbidden based on the cheshbon of truma in it, until you have chulin a rov against it. Rabbi Lazar, now. We said in our Mishnah, it only forbids the mixture based on the percentage of truma in it. So let's say a sar that was lifted up from one mixture, right, of truma with chulin, and lefi cheshbon, the sar forbids the mixture based on the cheshbon of truma in it. So the original truma in that sar joins up with the truma in the mixture, forbidding whatever it falls into, providing you don't have 100 in the chulin against the two trumas together. If your sar falls into chulin which is not meduma, then it's not medamas at all. Basically, if you got more than 100 against it, it's not medamea. Adati Rabbi Lazar, according to the view of Rabbi Lazar, why do we say chulin lamala and chulin shalamas and the stuff in lalos? Why don't we say 100 chulin in the second mixture corresponding to the two trumas? Maybe we should be bottled. Why don't they join up the chulin? Let's say in the. So remember, truma falls in one mixture, and then it falls into a second mixture. Okay, so why don't we join up the chulin, let's say 100 times as much in this box, with the chulin where in the second box, right? Which the chulin falls in the second box as well. There might also be 100 times as much. Together, they should nullify the two trumas. You hear that? We should say that if it falls here and then falls there, we should join all the chulins together to nullify it. So he says, Rabbi Lazar wanted to say, chulin shelemala nasu chershin. The chulin in the box, which has been lifted up, doesn't join up with the chulin which is in the second box to nullify the truma. They're like mutes, they're chershin, like someone who can't hear and can't speak. They don't join up. So since this chulin is also to zorim, and it's got Kedushas Truma with Rabbanan, it doesn't join up to be Mevatel the Truma. Right? Basically, it's as if it's not there. That's what it's saying. The Chulin doesn't all join up from the two mixtures to start nullifying it. Okay. Right, we said in our Mishnah, a sar Truma that falls in less than 100, and then from that mixture it fell into elsewhere. Rabbi Lezer was a master Truma Vada. Rabbi Lezer says you treat it as proper Truma. And the Chacham said, no, it's only based on the estimate of how much truma is in the mixture. Now, Rabbi Lazar says, then, the mixture is truma vadai. Let's say it fell 5 sar of the mixture into 5 places, which had chulin there, 1 sar in each one. So we say in each place where a sar that fell in that place, that's the sar of truma. And therefore it's midamea like proper truma. And we don't know where's the sar of truma, so each one of the 5 is madjamea, is causing a forbidden mixture like truma vadai. If they all fell, all the 5 sar fell in one place, Avram Lezer he'll agree that basically it's only midamea based on the cheshbon of truma that was there, which is 1 sar. It can't be in this mixture you have more than 1 sar of truma. That's where we started from. And if you've got 100 sar, then it's butter. Even in this, from Lezer holds, the Damea causes a mixture with Truma Vadai. We look at the whole mixture like definite Truma, and it's not bottom unless you have 100 chulin against it. He says, Alter Belezer, chulin shelemala nasu chevshin. He says, Rabbi Lezer agrees, the mixture is not with Damea. So you look at the cheshbon of Truma here. But when it says we treat it like Truma Vadai, it means the chulin in the mixture, which is like Lemalon, which fell from above, into other chulin, do not join up with the chulin which fell, the meduma, into them to be mevatel the Truma. The two chulins don't really merge. They're like chershin, they don't join up, not for Isur, not for Heta. And it comes out that the Truma still, as if it's on its own, it's not mixed with chulin at all. Right, according to the Chachamim, the chulin in the mixture joins to be mevatel the truma. So, but he's saying what? He's saying here, according to Chilfai, they're not joining up. This other chulin is not. It's like chershin. They don't join up with the other box where it came from. But Rabbi Elazar said, Ad Rabbanan, according to the Chachamim, chulin shelemala nasu chershin. That the chulin in, let's say, the sar lifted up from mixture doesn't join with the other chulin that fell to be mevatel the truma in the sar. So Ma ben Rabbi Elazar Rabbanan. So what are they arguing about? They seem to be saying the same thing. That the chulin in a mixture is not mitzaref to be mevatel the truma. So what's the machlokes for Rabbi Elazar? So the answer is chaymehu b'sar she'alas b'teich me'ah. He says the words Rabbi Elazar was said as far as truma that fell into 100, right? Truma fell in 100. You lifted up a sar for the Cohen. This sar got mixed up with other chulin, and the Chachamim hold the chulin above become chershim. Basically, it's a chumrah, especially with the sar that's lifted up, that since even the chulin has got kedusha, it's also to zarim, it doesn't join to mevatel the truma in the midst. But in our case, where the truma fell in less than 100 of chulin, it's not batel, then the chulin has got no kedusha, as it were. And when it fell into other chulin, the chacham say they all join up to mevatel the truma. You got that? I'll say that last bit again. It says, he says, the words Rabbi Elazar was said, truma falls into 100 of chulin, so you have to separate one sar, give it to the Kohen. And if this sar goes mixed up with other chulin, the chacham say, right, it's become chershin. It's a special chumrah, a sar that's separated. Although there's chulin, it's got kedusha, and it's also to Israelim. And it doesn't join up to mevatel the truma within it. But in our case, where truma falls into less than 100 of chulin, it's not batel the truma, right? Because the chulin has got no kedusha. When it falls into other chulin, the chachamim hold they all join up to mevatel the truma. Ayena alakal, is that the case that a sar that's taken out of 100 is more chomer than when a smaller mixture? That makes more sense if it falls into more than 100, it's less problematic than it falls into less than 100. So it makes more sense to say the din is more lenient because it was already batel in 100, and any mixture is permitted apart from the sar it's lifted up. And if you're going to tell me we say chulin nasu chershin, surely if it's in a mixture, if a bit mixture is worse, it's not even batel. It falls into other chulin. I mean, the chulin is not going to join up to mevatel it. So the question comes back, according to the Chachamim, it's chulin, you're saying the chulin above becomes chershin. I mean, what's the difference between them and Rabbi Elazar? So the answers Amri, they said, Kaidam Rabbi Yochanan, Sar shel truma shenafla lemeah. Now truma falls into chulin, you lift up one sar, then it falls into other chulin, chulin kol shehem mevatlin ha'isar. According to the Chachamim, the sar that's lifted up is not medameh at all. Not like Rabbi Elazar, it's medameh, and the chulin is like chershin, is not there. No. And based on this, Chilfai holds in our situation, according to the Chachamim, the chulin and the mixture join up to mevatel the truma. We don't say they become chershin, they become mutes. We can't ask on this from the view of Rabbi Elazar. He argues on it, he holds like Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, to be continued, Rabbi Isai. Because